Suspect Justin Flores, 35 years old, served 2 stints behind bars for car theft and burglary about 10 years ago. 1 strike. He was prohibited from having a gun. Yet when he was arrested in 2020 with a gun, drug possession, ammunition, a year later, DA Gascon's policies resulted in a plea deal and probation rather than 2 to 3 years behind bars. Now, we, of course, have asked DA George Gascon about this. His office simply released a statement saying, in essence, Alex and Marla, that was consideration with that the sentence was in consideration with cases for similar offenses, and that the suspect Flores did not have a violent criminal past. Hardly satisfying to the families of Joseph Santana and Michael Paredes and so many others. In the recall campaigns, this is just adding fuel to their fire. They believe they have enough signatures to qualify it for the ballot later in this year, and say this is another example of why they believe Gascon will be recalled. Alex, Marla?
All right, Phil, will stay with us. Let's bring in our legal analyst, Brian Claypool, to discuss the killer's probation. Brian, we thank you for being with us. You are especially impassioned by this because you yourself are a survivor of gun violence. You survived the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting. With that said, what really fires you up is the fact, what Phil just reported, the fact that in 2021, Gascon's office gave this guy a plea deal.
Yeah, Marla and Alex, thanks for having me. This is absolutely inexcusable, and this should have never happened. It's heartbreaking to hear that mom talk about her son. Imagine the wives and the children. But guess what? If George Gascon had done his job and followed the law, these 2 police officers would be alive. Why? Because in 2011, this guy was convicted of residential burglary. That's a felony. As part of his probation on that, he served some jail time, but as part of that probation, he was not to own a gun. Then in 2020, he's arrested for owning a gun, ammunition, and methamphetamine. Well, guess what? Where did he get that gun? Has anybody investigated that in Gascon's office? But let's put that aside. Why did Gascon's office then dismiss the first strike, the residential burglary, right? And then tosses out the ammunition charge, tosses out the methamphetamine charge, and hands this guy a day camp pass for probation. Gascon should have actually elevated these charges because this murderer had violated probation from 2011 because he owned a gun. This is just flat out unacceptable in LA County. People are sick of it. They're tired of human beings like these police officers being used as guinea pigs for Gascon's social experiment to promote his radical left-wing agenda.
Well, of course, when Gascon first came into office, he made a big deal about how he was going to have all this data to prove that his agenda works. He said he was going to come on our show all the time to talk about it and show proof of the data. He hasn't come on once since in over a year and a half. We wish that he would hold a press conference today and actually explain what he means. Point it out. Make the argument. But he's not doing that, Brian, so we can't put in his perspective here tonight. But how do you think this impacts the recall efforts?
Well, it's devastating for Gascon. At a time when 2 police officers are murdered and their families are impacted and people want to curb gun violence, and he doesn't even put his face in front of your camera and give an explanation to the community. And on top of that, I read an article that 2 law enforcement officials had reported to the LA Times that he allegedly put a lock on the disposition report that had dismissed that prior strike. I don't know if that's true or not, but that doesn't promote any transparency at all. It doesn't give anybody in LA County a feeling that they are safe. And this has to stop. And Alex, one more point. You can't do a cookie cutter approach. Oh, this guy wasn't that violent. That's his excuse. What criminal history record has Gascon been reading? This guy is a career criminal. He's a known gang member, and he owned a gun he shouldn't have owned, had ammunition, and you give this guy cotton candy and parole, and now 2 police officers are dead. This will affect his recall dramatically.
Phil.
Well, I understand your outrage, and having covered Gascon in the rare times that he does make himself available to reporters, his simple explanation is that tougher sentences do not deter crime, and that we need to do more to give people second chances and rehabilitate them than giving them long prison sentences where they just become more expert in breaking the law. So that would be his explanation, if I could speak for him. That is certainly no consolation to the families of Paredes and Santana, but is there any validity in that, Brian?
It's a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of fiction. It's just meant to promote this big radical agenda, Phil, so that he can promote his political career and try to be a hero for his career. There's no data that supports that a known gang member who's committed felonies, there was a report, Phil, that he allegedly had beat up a female in the last couple of weeks too. Did you hear about that? And this guy, you think this guy that killed these two police officers is capable of being rehabilitated? Put him on probation again. Let's see some more people killed. Is that really the society we live? This is an uncivilized society. Our sheriff has been doing a great job the last few years trying to arrest these crooks, and he can't make any headway because our DA lets them out with a hall pass so people are killed. It's just got to stop.
Well, Brian, I think we understand your point of view tonight.
Yes.
Phil, we appreciate your reporting today. And again, we hope the DA will come on and share his perspective. Brian, thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.